Hi, we're back and we're talking more about being changed by Jesus, and today we're going to be focusing on other kingdoms. It's important to recognize that Jesus spoke about the kingdom of heaven quite a bit. In fact, he talks about it almost more than any other subject. He says parables about it, he brings it up, he teaches about it, he says the kingdom of heaven is like, the kingdom of heaven is like, and he describes it. And then he talks about people in the kingdom. And in fact, even after Jesus died and was buried and resurrected, the living Jesus with scars in his hands taught the disciples what? He taught them about the kingdom for 40 days. Now, think about that. The importance of the kingdom and what Jesus had to say. What is the kingdom of heaven? And we need to ask that question when we look at the Gospels. As we look at Jesus and what he taught, we need to be wondering, what is the kingdom of heaven? How does it relate to me? And how can I enter into it? And how is it that it is available now? When he said that to his disciples, it was puzzling. You know, you can enter into the kingdom now. That's a shocking thing, because most of us, I think, I know I'm one of those, walks around with a settled kind of conviction that the kingdom I'm going to really experience when I'm dead. But Jesus promises entrance into the kingdom, availability of the kingdom through Jesus being available to me now in my actual life. So we're going to talk about different strategies that people use to depend on other kingdoms. There are a lot of different religions in the world, but pretty much all of them fall into camps. And we're all secretly following these ideas. And these ideas are not just concepts, they are kingdoms. They have authority. They guide us. They have a Lord. And you are a servant of that kingdom. And so it's very important that we, as we continue to be changed by Jesus, that we look directly at the different lies and kingdoms that have infiltrated into our thinking and into our lives. And that's usually discussed as worldview. We all have a worldview, but we don't think about our worldview. We don't think about that we believe that this table is real. We just believe it as an assumption. And you could go to another culture and someone could say to you, how do you really know that that table is real? Or maybe they don't assume it's real, or maybe they believe that it is alive and we think it's dead. That is puzzling to a Western mind. And in the very same way, ideas have crept into the church and into our thinking through books and through teachers, through accident, through combining two ideas. One was right and one was wrong. But we end up with these concepts that are riddled with kingdoms that are not Jesus's kingdom. So it's really important that we root those out, that we recognize them and root them out. And so I'm going to talk about 3 specific kingdoms. And the first one I'm going to talk about is a legalistic approach. There's a lot of religions in the world, but only one Jesus. And Jesus is a person, and so he's uniquely unlike any other religion in that he guides us into a following him religion instead of a set of rules that we follow. Whereas a legalistic approach to life looks at their life, makes a checklist, and then tries really hard to get the whole checklist done. In a very real way, the law in the Old Testament was set out for Israel in a way that they couldn't accomplish it. They were getting up every day knowing they were failing. They couldn't ever check every box. And if they did think they were checking every box, they were in a worse state because they were the people that were the most legalistic and didn't think they needed a savior. And so when Jesus came, it was very difficult for them to bend their knee to follow Jesus. And so legalism is a system, an entire approach to life. And we all have temptations of this. We all have areas in our lives where we We make our lists and try hard to make it work. But it's very different than relying on a living God for our answers. Going to God and personally asking him for what you need to live is a different approach. So that's how Jesus lines up against legalism. Legalism is a system that I can really easily trust in. And I can say, well, I did this, and I did this. My heart is ugly, but I feel good about it. It's like the cup. On the inside, it's dirty, but on the outside, it looks good. And so if you're looking at it at a certain angle, you're going to think, I'm all right. I'm a good person. I go to church. I try to do the right thing. I haven't killed anybody. I'm not committing adultery. And so you make your own list. You check all the boxes, and you say, and I believe in Jesus at the end. So that's it. But there's more. Following a living Jesus is different than having a set of rules that you follow. The next one we're going to talk about is paganism, and it's just like what it sounds like. It's life equals happy. It's whatever I long for, I get, and I use it to make me happy. It's my source of life is winning. My source of life is getting what I want. And it starts with I and it ends with I. It's all about me. And being a pagan is really simple. It's about fulfilling your own desires and at the expense of other people. But don't think that every pagan looks unloving. There are a lot of happy pagans that are even kind, but their God, their kingdom, the thing that rules them is their happiness. So once their happiness is threatened, they will trade in their birthright for a bowl of soup. They will absolutely give over their marriage, give over their life, give over their home, break their character, steal, rob. When it really boils down to it, at the end of the day, life equals happy, not Jesus. And so anytime a pagan runs up against Jesus saying something that will be painful for them to live out, they're going to say, no, I don't want to follow that. That won't make me happy. And they're not going to trust Jesus. Now, the third one we're going to talk about is Buddhism. Buddhism is very influential in our culture. In fact, even my kids, when they're watching cartoons, there's so much Eastern or Buddhist content that I've even caught my 4-year-old, going like from one of the karate cartoons that he learned. And I said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm meditating. And I'm like, meditating to what? And he said, I don't know. And he didn't know what it meant. He didn't know what he was doing, but the influence was right there. And Buddhism is even though it's hard to explain, the simplest way to explain the concept is that Buddha was rich and he had everything, and he gave up everything and went down to the river and found this real freedom from letting go of everything. And so the concept of Buddhism is that if I get rid of all of my longings and desires, that I'll be free and I will feel no pain. And there's truth in that. If you let go of your desires and you numb yourself and you think, I'm not going to think about that and I'm not going to long for anything and I'm not going to be disappointed, I'm going to keep my bar really low, then you're going to avoid some pain, but you're also going to be dead. You're going to be walking around numb. And the reason why that's dangerous is because your heart will slowly die, and it will become your God. Your God will be your comfort. Or as in Scripture says, their God will be their stomach. You'll become numb to pain. And it will protect you from pain, but the very thing that's protecting you from pain will keep you from life, and you'll never get to experience real life. To summarize, the first one that we talked about was legalism. And legalism will not give us the life that we want. Legalism will lead us into check boxes and trying harder, and it will not ultimately be the thing that changes our hearts. The second one is pagan, and paganism is all about my own personal idolatry or really loving myself. It's about life equals happy. And Buddhism is all about life equals avoiding pain or having no desires. And all three are roads that go completely away from the person of Jesus, because Jesus speaks very clearly against these religions. And they infiltrate into our thinking. Even though we say, I'm a Christian, I want you to know there are Christian Buddhists that are floating around in our church, in all churches. There are Christian legalists. We know that because of the book of Galatians. Paul is writing a letter to a church that is so legalistic that it's leaving out people from coming to the table of fellowship. He's writing this scathing letter saying, what are you doing? What gospel are you preaching? What did you trade in? So we know that legalistic Christians are possible because he says, dear brothers, right? He's writing to brothers in the church that are trading in a legalistic form of Christianity, creating rules and laws and checklists that people don't really need to follow. And we know that pagan Christians existed because of the book of Corinthians. You have a very clear picture of a church that is trying to blend their own personal passions and happiness with Jesus. And they're taking their paganism and they're blending it with Jesus, and they're missing out on the true gospel in life. They're not ending up loving anybody. And we also get in John a picture, and 1 John and 2 John, a picture of the Gnostic Christians, the Christians that wanted to have an inner spiritual change, but not an outer actual change. Or as James talks about, faith without works is dead. That the outliving of our life and the suffering that comes along with following Jesus is part of the transformation of our character and person. We can't follow Jesus without pain. And so all three are like roads that lead away from Jesus. And Paul's letters, right, that he's writing, or 1 John, 2 John, or the book of James, they're speaking to these diversions from following Jesus, these other kingdoms that infiltrate and influence our thinking and eventually become our God. And so it's very important that we are watchful and mindful of false doctrines and lies that infiltrate our thinking in our churches. And the reason why I bring this up is because we all lean towards one or all of these at different times in our life. And so this week I want you really to be thinking about which one of these three do I lean towards, and spend some time praying and talking to other believers about that.